Happy Sunday night, Interblops, and welcome back to I Played a Thing, Space Harrier and Friends. Only today, it isn't. From the very beginning of this series, I've been mulling over how to handle the Afterburner games. There are definite commonalities between Space Harrier and Afterburner, mainly that they're both mid-80s, behind-the-character rail shooters by Sega, designed by Yu Suzuki, and built around sprite-based 3D. However, they really don't play remotely alike. So, what to do? Well, in the end, I decided that while they are fundamentally different animals, they feel like divergent lines of evolution, starting from a similar place and finding their own distinct paths. As such, not addressing Afterburner at all would feel like an oversight. Therefore, I'll be devoting this episode to the higher points of the Afterburner series, and then we'll get back to focusing on the more Harrier-esque, if you will. The Afterburner series begins in 1987 with Afterburner 2. Wait, begins with 2? Well, for all practical purposes, yes. There was an Afterburner 1, but it was released only in Japan and had a very short shelf life. Just a few months after that initial release, Sega replaced it with an updated version including a few more levels and enemies, and most importantly, a throttle control. Despite being an upgrade rather than a whole new game, this revision was given the name Afterburner 2, and it was in this form that the game was exported to the West. Afterburner 2 runs on the Sega X board, the third iteration of the Superscalar series of arcade hardware. This step beyond the tech used in such games as Hang-On, Outrun, and of course Space Harrier, came with a bump in RAM and a faster GPU, enabling the simultaneous rendering of twice as many sprites. Perhaps more interestingly, the X-board adds hardware support for rotation effects as well as scaling, a capability Afterburner 2 exploits for all it's worth. One more thing I'd like to note about Afterburner 2 before we dive right in is that it was very much a product of its time. The mid to late 80s had a real love affair with the fighter jock, and such phenomena as Top Gun, Iron Eagle, and Williams' popular F-14 Tomcat pinball table all contributed to a pop-cultural zeitgeist that Sega was more than happy to hop aboard. So strap in, dear viewer, slip on your aviator shades, set your watch for about 3 decades ago, and ride with me down the highway to the danger zone. As is our habit, we'll start with a quick look at the attract mode. One of the first things you'll probably notice about Afterburner is that the horizon line swings wildly back and forth as you pivot, and that is the new rotation capability of the X-board being put through its paces. Another thing you may notice is that at all times our F-14 stays pretty close to the center of the screen, and if there's one thing that kind of irks me about controlling Afterburner, that's probably it. I really prefer the Space Harrier style of moving all around the screen. And finally, you'll probably notice that Afterburner is pretty damn fast. It's just like the 14th stage of Space Harrier, except in this case, the whole game is that way. Just a little diagram of our cockpit there, and oh, wait for it. Yeah, screw that one. This ain't your parents' Afterburner. Ooh, Retfa Renrub, that's my favorite. Oh, right, Afterburner. Yep, this whole warping and rotating mass of spheres forming the two, that was real impressive in 1987. But we were easily amused back then. Ah well, I think we get the point. Time to get on with the actual game. And that means taking off from the carrier Sega Enterprise. Sega Enterprise? Sega Enterprises? You see what they did there? And right away, we are right in the thick of it. I don't actually know who we're fighting here. In fact, if this game has any story to speak of, it's a mystery to me. But we don't really need one. After all, it's all about the experience, all about the speed and the flight and the getting blown up over and over again. Yeah, I have to admit straight up that I am not very good at Afterburner, and especially when we get later into the game, I am going to be dying over and over and just actually having very little flight time between deaths. But that's okay. We can keep continuing and we can keep plowing ahead. And as you've probably just noticed, the stages in Afterburner are very short. There are 23 of them technically, but the 23rd is just the ending, so 22 stages of actual action. One thing you never have to worry about is the terrain, because no matter what, no matter how low you fly, you will never crash into anything, although of course if you get shot down, you will auger in very nicely. There are 2 death animations you can possibly get. I don't know if they're random or if there's any specific factor in which one you get, but sometimes you blow up in midair and sometimes you auger in just like you saw a moment ago, and I much prefer the latter. Every now and then you will get to hook up with your refueling plane there, I don't know if there's a proper name for them, and you will get some of your missiles restored. But really, Afterburner 2 is pretty generous with its missiles, so you're not likely to run up against the limit unless you're spamming them non-stop, which is not a good idea. That's actually one thing that changed between Afterburner 1 and 2. Number 1 was much stingier about your missile loadout, and you actually were at much more substantial risk of running out. Speaking of weaponry, you have 2 weapons in Afterburner 2, much the same as the kinds that you had in Planet Harriers. You have your gun, which has unlimited ammo, so I always just hold down the trigger the entire time, there's no real reason not to. And then you have your missiles, which are much more restricted, but again, as long as you're playing Afterburner 2, which is the only one most people played, you should have enough to get you through. And also, like in Planet Harriers, you can sweep your crosshairs across any number of enemy planes and then just fire as many missiles as you need to shoot them all down. And one thing that is actually really nice about this game's design is the way you get the computer voice saying fire every time you lock onto an enemy and get the ability to take it down with a missile. Because there's always a lot going on in Afterburner, and so you can always just listen to that voice even if you're not able to see what exactly is going on, and how many times you hear fire is how many times you should shoot off missiles. In addition to the mid-air refueling, you get to land for refuelings every now and then. The motorcycle there was a hang-on reference, by the by. Could be just a random guy on a motorcycle, but we'll have an Outrun reference later, so I'm pretty sure that's meant to refer to hang-on. Anyway, those little intermissions are something else that was added for Afterburner 2. The original version of the game not having those moments where you would land and get your missiles restocked. Kinda lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So, it's more than just a little bit of audio flair to make the sound more interesting. The fire voice is actually really useful, because you don't actually have any visual indicator of what enemies you've just locked onto and ones you've actually loosed missiles at. That's something that will change in future games in the series, but for now, you don't really have any visual indicator of that. So having the number of times the voice says fire to let you know how many times you can fire off your missiles and actually have them hit something, very handy indeed. Now what you just saw there, and what you can also see on my radar in the upper right corner, or heads-up display if you prefer, sometimes you get a plane on your tail. And when you do that, you want to try and shake them before they can put enough shots in you to bring you down. The gunfire from planes behind you won't kill you instantly. You can only take a few hits, and there's no real guaranteed way to know how many you can take. That is also something that will be changed in later games in the series, but for now, just try not to get hit at all, because you never really know how much you're going to be able to survive. Oh, and we're on to our first bonus stage. Yep, Afterburner does have bonus stages in which you get to sweep through a canyon like so and blow up ground targets. It's the only time you'll really have to contend with walls, and the only time you'll really have any ground targets to go after. So you'll just want to destroy as many tents, trucks, hangars, and so on as you can, just to rack up the points, and as with most arcade games of the time, enough points will eventually get you an extra life. And of course it's good for your score for the leaderboard at the end of the game. Now, unlike most bonus stages, deaths in this one are for real. I don't think it's actually possible to hit those communication towers, but if you run into the canyon walls, you will die and it will take away a life. So don't get yourself killed in the bonus stages, that's just embarrassing. Oh, wasn't that nice? We've been locked onto by an enemy missile. Now those I think you can just plain outrun. In Afterburner 1 it was a little trickier because you'd have to kind of juke side to side and get them off your tail that way, but if you just hit the Afterburners in Afterburner 2, then I think you will eventually outpace them. In Afterburner 1, of course, that was not an option because the game had not introduced actual speed control yet and didn't have the throttle lever that you would see on an Afterburner 2 cabinet. Oh, also you've seen me do a barrel roll several times, and that will happen if you just sweep yourself all the way to one direction and then switch to the other direction quickly. A lot of the times when you're dodging rapidly back and forth, it'll happen by accident, which can be a little irritating, but not a big deal generally speaking, and sometimes it can help you dodge a missile or get an enemy off your tail. I think there is a reliable science to get the chasers from tailing you, some particular combination of left and right timings that will always work, but I don't know it. I just know I've seen people do it a lot more consistently than I'm able to, but as I've mentioned, I'm not especially good at this game. Case in point, I'm just dying over and over again. But, hey, we're almost halfway through the game. If you've been watching Space Harrier and Friends up to this point, you'll probably recall me mentioning that, relatively speaking, I'm not all that much of an Afterburner guy. And that's not meant as any disrespect to the game, which I think is pretty damn cool. It's just that I never quite feel as in control of Afterburner as I am when I'm playing something like Space Harrier or Thunderblade or Galaxy Force. In those, you have a lot more motion around the screen, whereas in Afterburner, as I mentioned, you stay relatively centered. Your fighter does move around a little as you move the flight stick, but it's in a fairly small box in the center of the screen. If you watch me move around, you can see kind of where I hit the boundaries of that box, and I stop moving while the terrain continues to scroll in that direction. And I freely admit that some of it is me. I just don't track the motion of everything going on the screen that well when I'm not moving, and rather the environment is scrolling around me to a greater extent. Matter of taste, I suppose. It's just why I never got into this as much as I do some of the other games that we'll be exploring or have already explored in this series. Well, things are just kind of carrying on in their merry way for the moment, so I'll take a moment to talk about ports. Afterburner was a smashing success for Sega, just a tremendously popular game in the arcades. And so, no surprise that it was ported to every computer and console platform under the sun. The problem that it ran into, as a home game, was pretty much the same problem that Space Harrier did. The technology just wasn't there in home computers and consoles at the time. Oh, and there goes the Outrun car. Anyway, so any home release for a very long time would be badly compromised. Oh, let me hold that thought for a moment. I never noticed this before, but it looks like it counts those little intermissions where you land and get your missiles restocked. It counts those as its own stages. So I guess since there are 2 of those in the ending, that means of the 23 levels, 20 of them are actually playable, not 22. So let me correct my earlier statement there. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, there were just no computers or consoles available at the time that were really able to replicate the Afterburner experience at home. And it was not until the 32X that we got a more or less arcade-perfect version of Afterburner 2 for any kind of home platform. And that wasn't until 1995. Quite a wait. And wow, we've actually found out something good about the 32X. It was the first platform that gave us decent home versions of some of these Super Scalar games. Well, I suppose Knuckles Chaotix wasn't bad either. Anyway, before the 32X version, one of the better ports that was released for Afterburner 2 was in 1989 for the Fujitsu FM Towns computer. That was a Japanese-only computer system. And one of the neat things about the FM Towns version of Afterburner 2 was that not only was it closer to the arcade game than most of the other ports available within the 80s, it also had an arranged soundtrack. Really, really, really good renditions of the music that will be used again later in the Afterburner series, so just keep a note on that in the back of your mind. And really, on the subject of the music, it really holds up well, I think. The music for this was really, really solid in 1987, and perfectly suited to the time. I mean, it's got that Top Gun, Iron Eagle, 80s fighter jock butt rock sound down pat. Pretty impressively for a Japanese composer, I would have to say. And it's perfectly suited to the game, and it still sounds great. I have to give Sega AM2 credit, they really knew their way around a Yamaha FM synth chip. As a matter of fact, the last game that we're going to be covering in this episode will be Afterburner Climax, which was the last arcade Afterburner game. And in Afterburner Climax, you have a choice of whether you want to listen to the original soundtrack created for that game, or you can listen to the classic 1987 Afterburner 2 soundtrack, and honest to God, I prefer the Afterburner 2 music. I think it sounds better and is a better accompaniment to Afterburner Climax than what they came up with for that game in 2006, with all of the technological limitations removed. And that's not even me shitting on the composers for Afterburner Climax. I think they did a very respectable job. I would just say the Afterburner 2 music is that damn good. And yes, I just died in a bonus stage, and I was even riding the brake the whole time. Very embarrassing, but what can you do? It's not like I haven't had any other number of embarrassing deaths in this run. I must reiterate, not especially good at Afterburner. But hey, we're past all the intermissions, we're past all the bonus stages, we are now into the home stretch. Just a few more stages to go, and we will have completed our mission. Whatever our mission might happen to be. I sure hope our mission was just go out there and blow up a whole bunch of shit, because if there were any other objectives, I think we kind of ignored them. And yes, in this here home stretch, Afterburner has completely gone balls to the wall, batshit banana farts insane. We've got rockets flying up my ass, we've got salvos of missiles flying at us from the front, we've got helicopters swinging by, and just clinging to life. Fortunately, we do, even at this late stage of the game, get the occasional reload, and it's much appreciated because, really, at the pace that Afterburner tends to move at, any opportunity you have to pause for a moment and catch your breath, it is always a very welcome thing. Of course, I'm creating plenty of my own little pauses in the action just by dying so frequently, and I suppose that is still an opportunity to pause and catch your breath, even if it's not entirely advantageous to progress. Ah well. Yeah, at this point I have pretty much lost all ability to keep track of everything going on the screen, but hey, it's all part of the Afterburner experience. But you know, even if, or when, you get to that point where you're desperately flinging around the flight stick, spraying and praying with your missiles and Vulcan gun, and just hoping that somehow you'll get through those last few levels before having to continue yet again, you're still having a good time. And that's really what we play the VidCons for, isn't it, folks? That's what we ask of them. And I think even when it gets a little out of control, that's something that Afterburner 2 handily provides. So, once again, I doff my cap to the folks at Sega AM2. But then again, they also gave me Space Harrier, so I was gonna love them anyway. Who are we kidding here? I like how the mission control keeps telling me fire, fire, even when I'm a rapidly expanding ball of gas in the sky. Oh wow, we are really close to the end and we're still getting one more lovely umbilical connection there. Well, I guess that's very nice of Afterburner, not wanting us to run out of explosives at the last second. Well, we got time to make a few more deliveries before Christmas, boys. Let's make them good. 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, they're all fucked. At 21, that means we should only have one more actually playable level ahead of us, and then level 23 will be the conclusion. Yeah, there is really no break in the action at this point. there's pretty much always a missile coming at you, and sometimes there's a missile coming at you and a missile coming up behind you, and heaven help you. Lovely scenery, though. And at long last, we make our triumphant return to the Sega Enterprise. Yep, no end boss or anything like that. We're keeping it fairly true to the real world here. Or I should say, as realistic as any one-man Air Force suicide mission can be considered to be. And in lieu of a credits roll, we're just going to get this shot where we have all of the people who worked on the game with their names on the suits there. You can see Yu Suzuki in the upper left. And my high score ranking, which is, well, it's a high score, certainly. Wow, look at the number of digits there. We thought Space Harrier was a high-scoring game. But in terms of rank and number of confirmed kills, I did kind of shitty there. I'm not actually sure what all those rank medals actually indicate. If anyone knows how those are rewarded, I would certainly be interested in hearing it. Please feel free to let me know in the comments. But yeah, that's about it for Afterburner 2. Kind of a hard game to play well, I think, but a good time nonetheless. And even if your 25 or 50 cents went away pretty quickly back in '87, you got a pretty good ride for them. One of the oddities of the middle portion in Afterburner series history is that several games were released without actually bearing the Afterburner name. You'd think with a title as immensely popular as Afterburner that Sega would want to slap it on everything remotely applicable, but that does not seem to have been the philosophy at the time. And so our next game, released in 1990, goes by G-Loc Air Battle. G-Loc stands for Gravity-Induced Loss of Consciousness, so in other words, it's when your body is subjected to G-forces of such intensity that you pass the fuck out. Credit where due, that's a pretty badass title for an air combat game. Full marks. Unfortunately, that may be one of the best things about it. Yes, friends, I have to be honest, I do not like G-Loc. In addition to skipping on the Afterburner name, it also discards most of what was great about Afterburner. Most noticeably, the sense of speed is almost completely gone, and your missile lock is almost painfully slow unless you hold a target steady in your sights for a few moments. Because careful, steady flight is exactly what we were all looking for in an Afterburner sequel, am I right, folks? I do wonder to what extent the dramatic change in tempo was made to accommodate the R360. You see, in addition to the usual upright and deluxe sit-down cabinets, G-Loc was also made available in Sega's most insane super deluxe motion cabinet ever, the R360. The design of this creature was kind of like sitting the player at the center of a huge gyroscope, and true to its name, it could rotate you 360 degrees in any direction. If your aircraft goes upside down, so do you. Of course, the weight of the machinery and the need to accommodate a squishy human passenger meant that the R360 couldn't exactly reverse directions on a dime, so it may be that G-Loc was deliberately designed to slow down the action so the R360 could keep pace. The world may never know. In any case, whether designed around cabinet limitations or not, G-Loc is honestly kind of boring. And despite being powered by the Sega Y board, successor to the X board and latest in the line of superscalar hardware, it doesn't have much to offer in terms of audio-visual fireworks either. So we'll just take a quick look at this one before moving on. As we make our customary visit to the attract mode, the first thing you're going to notice about G-Loc most likely is the fact that you spend a lot of your time in a first-person cockpit view, and the only time you zoom out to the old-style third-person view is when there's an enemy on your tail. And I do have to say the transition between the first and third-person views looks really cool. Full marks for that. It's definitely a departure, though. Not that a departure is necessarily a bad thing, but it really does kind of grab you and make you go, wow, this is going to be a very different experience from Afterburner 2. Okay, I get the idea. We're supposed to fire. Controls are basically the same. You have the same kind of throttle, Vulcan gun, and missile buttons. And it appears we're flying a Zeke. And the Zeke is equipped with a Dragonfly missile? You might want to take a slightly closer look at your romanization there, guys. One of the trickier things about G-Loc is that your lock-on works a little different. You have to really kind of hover the sight over the target in order to get it to lock on. It has to stay there for a moment in a steady sort of way. You'll see a little more of that when we actually start playing. But it's one of the things that really kind of drives me nuts about this game, and keeps it from feeling as good as the previous. Well, it's about time we got on with it, so... Beginner would probably be the most sensible, but let's go ahead and try medium. Just drop into the middle of the pool there. Oh, and we do have a dedicated afterburner button. Now, one of the oddest things about G-Loc is that it has no live system. The whole thing is timer-based. We also start off with a ground mission in a canyon similar to the old bonus stages, which is also kind of funky. No problem with that, though. Anyway, your goal for each stage is to shoot down as many targets as is required, 5 in this case, before your time runs out. You can die as many times as you want to. It will just use up your time faster. And most of the time, you're going to have enemy aircraft flying forward from behind you. There are not going to be nearly as many coming at you head-on. Which makes this really feel a lot less like an air combat game, and a little more of a, well, shooting gallery. Of course, you will sometimes have enemies coming at you head-on, otherwise you'd never really be at much risk of getting killed, except when someone is tailing you. But, yeah, it's really a much, much smaller part of the game. You're probably seeing what I mean about the pace. A lot of the time, it's just enemies slowly drifting ahead from behind. Also, you know what, I'm not sure I really care for the new visual style of the ground, which in this case is usually just a flat textured surface rather than a large sort of amalgamation of scaling sprites. I guess there's a little more variation in it, but it just makes the world look flatter. And, I mean, it literally is flatter. Yeah, there are a lot of, I suppose, fairly bold decisions made in G-Loc, and credit for audacity, I suppose, but I just can't say that many of them pay off in any meaningful way. And I don't know if you can really see from what's going on screen what I mean about the lock-on. If you just pass your cursor briefly over an enemy fighter, then you don't get your lock-on. You have to kind of hover it there for a moment. And we have run out of time, and that means the end of the game, and I do not think we are going to continue onward. That's really about enough to get a good sense of G-Loc. There are some ground strafing missions like the bonus stages in Afterburner 2, but other than that, you've really seen pretty much what there is to see. There aren't going to be any boss fights or intermissions or anything like that. This really does seem like it was kind of made as a vehicle for the R360. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that means if you're playing it without the R360 experience, in a regular old cabinet, or of course on an emulator like this, then yeah, it's just not particularly engaging. So that's enough of that then. Let's move on. Our next mission is going to be another brief one, and our target will be Strike Fighter, another Y-board game released a year after G-Loc. It runs on what appears to be the same engine, with very similar visuals and controls, and seems to be essentially an attempt to retune G-Loc into something that feels a little more like classic Afterburner. It reverts from the time attack structure to a live system, advances levels after a certain amount of flying, rather than requiring you to meet a target quota, and throws more head-on attackers at you. It still has G-Loc's rather plodding pace and flat appearance, though, so I don't find it entirely successful. It bears mentioning that there's a game for the Sega CD titled Afterburner 3. This is actually just a rather shite port of Strike Fighter, with an added option for permanent third-person view. It's really not very good at all. It does, however, borrow its soundtrack from the aforementioned FM Towns version of Afterburner 2, meaning one of the most rubbish games in the Afterburner series sports some of the best music. Anyway, as with G-Loc, we'll just do a quick flyby of Strike Fighter, and then move on to better things. When Strike Fighter boots up, you get this brief snippet of a ground target attack, and you are no doubt already seeing just how similar this is to G-Loc with respect to the cockpit view and everything like that, which is why I strongly suspect it's running on exactly the same engine. Something that I did forget to mention in my lead-up to this game is that Strike Fighter was only released in Japan. It was never exported anywhere else, and that's really kind of a shame, given that most of the usual territories did get G-Loc, and I think this is a more successful game. You know, your mileage may vary as always, and no doubt there are folks who enjoy the more time attack type approach of G-Loc and the sort of laid-back aspect to it, but it just doesn't do it for me. Strike Fighter, on the other hand, it still feels a little more G-Loc-y than I'd quite like, but I do think it's quite a bit more fun. Already, you're probably picking up on the fact that we've got a more energetic soundtrack. The missile lock works more like it did in classic Afterburner. You just have to kind of zip the targeting reticle over things for just a second, and it will lock right on. We're getting more enemies flying at us and shooting at us. It just feels like a much more lively game than G-Loc. And I think if this was what they released initially, then this point in the history of the Afterburner series would probably be a little better regarded. Of course, I may just be projecting my own thoughts onto the gaming world at large, so I will reiterate, your mileage may vary, I can just give you my take on things. But yeah, this just doesn't really give me the same kind of kick in the pants as good old Afterburner 2, but I will say it doesn't feel like the pleasure cruise that G-Loc did. There's a little bit of actual adrenaline to Strike Fighter. One thing that's kind of interesting to me also is just how forgiving it is with the enemy missiles. You've probably heard that "woo" a few times when one just barely swings past you. And really, you will not be hit by an enemy missile unless it smacks you right in the windscreen. Pretty much what you can see in your first-person view is your hitbox. So if a missile still seems like it ought to hit your plane but doesn't actually smack you right in the cockpit, it will not count as a hit. And if it's a very near thing, then you'll get that little "woo." I think that's probably an attempt at being a little more merciful about not being able to tell exactly where your fighter is. Because we don't actually see the body of old Zeke most of the time, we just see what the pilot sees. I think that's kind of a nice touch, a little concession to the difficulties of the different perspective. Something you may also notice about Strike Fighter is that it really doesn't do a whole lot to highlight the divisions between stages. If you look at the upper left, we're already in Stage 4, and we really haven't had any obvious transitions from level to level. So it goes for kind of a seamless progression, and it makes your progress feel a little less obvious, but it's kind of a neat effect, I suppose. And it appears Stage 4 is where I start eating hit after hit. And once again, we've already seen pretty much all there is to see from Strike Fighter. It's not a bad game. I think it's certainly better than G-Loc, as I mentioned before, but again, it just doesn't quite have that gripping feel for me that the original Afterburner 2 did. Nevertheless, credit where due, it is a step in the right direction, and with the next game on our hit list today, we'll be seeing something of a return to form. The 4 years following Strike Fighter were rather eventful ones in the realm of video game technology. Sprite-based 3D had gradually fallen out of favor, and one of the companies leading the charge into the brave new world of polygonal 3D was none other than dear old Sega. 1992 saw the release of Virtua Racing, the first game for Sega's new Model 1 arcade board, which went on to power Star Wars Arcade and Virtua Fighter. The floodgates had been opened, and in 1993, just 1 year after the debut of Model 1, Sega released their second-generation 3D arcade board, the intuitively named Model 2. This proved to be a long-lived and successful platform for Sega, remaining in service until 1998, and playing host to such notables as Daytona USA, Virtua Cop 1 and 2, Virtua Fighter 2, Virtual On, and House of the Dead. Oddly enough, one of the more overlooked entries in the Model 2 lineup was Sky Target, number 4 in the Afterburner series. For whatever reasons, it doesn't seem to have been very widely distributed, and is seldom remembered today. And that's a real shame, as for my money, it's the first game to really recapture the Afterburner spirit since '87. So, let's jump right in and show it a little love, shall we? Winners don't use drugs. Or more accurately, winners don't get caught using drugs. Otherwise, they'll be stripped of the victories they earned while on drugs. But never mind that, here's Sky Target. As you can hear, with advances in graphical technology, come advances in butt rock technology. Listen to that guitar. This is already a good sign, because you can't have a good old air combat game in Afterburner tradition without some good old butt rock in the Afterburner tradition. The graphics perhaps haven't aged as well as the sprite-based ones of Afterburner 2, but that tends to be the way it goes with 90s era 3D, and I think they'll get the job done. We've got just a brief snippet of a track mode here, but I think you can see how we're already taking a turn for the old school, with the return of the third-person perspective, and things aren't zipping along at quite the insane pace of Afterburner 2, but gameplay is looking pretty lively, and I think Sky Target all around makes a pretty good first impression. Also nice to hear that we're still getting the Fire voice sample. Nice to see that some things never quite go out of style. Whoosh! And here's my high score from my test run. We'll see if we can beat that this time. Spoiler alert, we totally will. But here comes a briefing.
The XF-A49 fighter, possessing unsurpassed firepower and seek and destroy capabilities, has been stolen. You must destroy it before it falls into the hands of another country. Repeat, you must destroy it.
Sir, yes sir. So the XF-A49 White Sword, an experimental fighter, has been captured, and we have to make sure it gets blowed up so it doesn't fall into enemy hands. Wow, that's something new. We've actually got a plot for one of these games. And now something else new, we have a choice of 4 aircraft. The F-14D, F-15S, F-16C, or the French Navy's Rafale M. But we're gonna have to go with the F-14D because, come on, F-14, it's the Afterburner plane. At any rate, it is time to get our asses in the air and track down that White Sword. And right out of the gate, you'll notice a few very nice features that are introduced to the Afterburner series with Sky Target. First of all, when you have some enemy planes appearing on the distant horizon that you can just barely see, some arrows will appear pointing them out, making them a little easier to target. Very helpful. Even more helpful, you've probably noticed that sometimes the lock-on indicators will be green and sometimes they'll be red. What that means is that when they're green, you've locked onto the enemy but you have not yet fired at them. When it turns red, that means you've already loosed a missile at that target. So that can let you know how many times you need to push the missile button. Just a little more information over top of the fire indicator. Oh, and here's something else new. The armored bomber, Halbert, will be the first of our boss fights. Yes, Sky Target, unlike any previous game in the Afterburner series, has a boss at the end of every level. They're huge and rather outlandish, nothing that you'd find in any sort of real-world situation, but I think they're a nice touch. I'd rather have something fun to fight against than realism, so yeah, I've got no problem with this.
You're not bad, but you haven't tasted real warfare yet. Hang in.
O ye of little faith. And I should mention, as we move on into Mission 2, that each of those boss fights will come with a timer attached, and you'll have to destroy all of the boss's weak points and pump enough missiles into it overall before the timer runs out, or the boss will escape and you won't get your bonus for destroying it. This can be a little difficult to do on your first run through the game, but once you've got a little bit of a sense of where the weak points are going to be located, it's usually not too hard, and in this run we will be successfully destroying all of the bosses. Meanwhile, you'll notice we just took our first hit, and we have a life meter that just went from 100 to 80 to 60. That's one of the kind of weird things about Sky Target compared to other Afterburner games. You only have one life, and to compensate for that, your fighter can take quite a few hits. Machine guns will only drop your health a little bit, and even a direct missile strike won't kill you outright, although it will hurt quite a bit more than being clipped by a Vulcan cannon. That leads into something else I like a lot about Sky Target. I feel more in control in this game of whether I live or die. That's not to say it's easy compared to Afterburner 2, but I feel like you get more of an opportunity to see missiles coming, and to actually give your reflexes a chance to kick in. More on that in a little while. We are now up against heavily armed flying wing Talwar. And this boss fight gets a little bit hairier because it's got lots of hard points from which to launch missiles at you, in addition to its machine guns. And some of the weak points are a little tougher to hit because they open and close, and you can only hit them when they're revealed, so you have to actually time the lock-on and launch of your missiles accordingly. And that's another of the kind of touches that make me like Sky Target so much. This game really tries a lot of new things. While being so faithful to the old-school Afterburner 2, it tries out a lot of new ideas, and unlike G-Loc, I think pretty much all of those ideas actually hit this time. They succeed. I don't know if that's a result of better playtesting, better inspiration, or just the people who worked on this game, but it's certainly something I appreciate very much. And speaking of new ideas, branching paths. There are just 2 branching paths in Sky Target, but hey, another new idea that does nothing but add to the game. Kudos. So we're gonna go to the city this time. Seems like a more dangerous choice, doing a little urban dogfighting, but a more interesting one, so hey, why not? As usual, we have no limit on our virtual quarters, so we'll go for the gusto. Anyway, I was talking about feeling more in control of Sky Target than I did of Afterburner 2, and one of the other things, in addition to just giving you more of an opportunity to actually let your reaction time do its thing, you actually get to move around the screen in Sky Target. While that does mean it sacrifices the wild perspective swinging back and forth that Afterburner 2 gave us, it means we can move freely around all 4 corners of the screen and go all the way in that direction, instead of being restricted to a little box in the middle of the screen. And I think that really does help a lot. Of course, mileage may vary. Some people may have not been bothered by this sort of tunnel vision of Afterburner 2 in the way I was, but speaking strictly for myself, it really helps with dodging. I can tell exactly where my plane is in relation to the other planes and in relation to the missiles, and yeah, that really works out for me. And our next Sky Target, if you will, is going to be Vajra, a giant helicopter. Seems to be pretty good at aiming its machine guns in my direction, a little more than the previous bosses were. With those, you would just kind of have to not blunder into its field of fire, but this one, it'll actually aim at you with a little more precision. It's also got those doors on either side that will periodically swing open and launch what looks like fuel barrels at you, which is kind of weird, but I suppose it's effective. That's an opportunity to make a little better use of your Vulcan gun, because you can shoot those fuel barrels out of the air and prevent them from hitting you. And just like Halbert and Talwarl before it, that's it for Vajra. I like the way the rotors just sort of spin off into space. Oh shit, that can't be good though. Sorry, civilians.
There's a big missile heading up from below. Make dessert of it.
Did you really just say make dessert of it? Maybe you better leave the Snappy Banter to me, good buddy. Anyway, Mission 4 is going to take us on a steep dive through some heavy cloud cover in pursuit of that big missile we just heard about. And remember what I was saying about generally feeling more in control of my fate in Sky Target? Yeah, this mission is kind of the exception to that. The perspective kind of swings around you, it rotates as you move left and right, and that really screws with my targeting abilities. As always, it may be, in large or small part, an issue with me rather than the game. Some people may not be bothered by it, but yeah, I have a hard time telling exactly where my reticle's gonna move. So yeah, this stage definitely screws with me. Did we just shoot down some commercial airliners? I hope not. Otherwise, we're more of a danger to the general population than the White Sword could ever be. I will say that this perspective is pretty cool looking and very handy in targeting the big aircraft that we're trying to take down. Smoke trails look a little weird, but I still think this game overall looks pretty good for 1995. They made solid use of the Model 2's capabilities. And there it is, the Long-Range Strategic Ballistic Missile, Scepter. This is one hell of a big rocket with what I can only assume are very bad intentions, so maybe if we can bring it down, we can make it up to the civvies a little for dropping a disabled giant helicopter on a densely inhabited city and possibly bringing down a commercial airliner. This is a pretty easy boss with respect to staying alive. It doesn't have much in the way of actual offensive capabilities to throw at you aside from a few lasers and such. But it can be a little tricky to bring it down within the time limit. I'm a little careless about hitting the weak points in this run, but with a few seconds left to spare, we pull it out. Now see, it looks like we're probably dropping what's left of the rocket on another inhabited area there, so I don't know, Sky Target folks, are you really thinking through your surgical strikes here? Well, never mind. Moving on, we're going to have another more straightforward mission, and I'm more than a little happy to be returning to the traditional perspective. And as this stage continues on in a fairly conventional way, this gives me an opportunity to bring up a few things that I didn't think to earlier. First of which, there is one step in which I suppose Sky Target is something of a step backward from Afterburner 2, and that's that there isn't any kind of speed control. Yes, the throttle has been removed, and truth be told, I don't miss it as much as I might have expected to. In Afterburner 2, it did give you a more effective way of dealing with things coming up behind you, but Sky Target doesn't actually have enemies coming up behind you, and I don't feel it's a tremendous loss. Some folks may miss it more than I did, but I'm okay with that trade-off. Also, I neglected to mention earlier that Sky Target did have a Saturn port. Unfortunately, the Saturn port is not great. The Saturn was a little behind the Model 2 board in terms of 3D capabilities, and it shows in a lot of ports, like Virtua Fighter 2, which had flat backgrounds instead of 3D ones. Next boss being heavily armed strategic bomber Gungnir. Anywho, as I was saying, yeah, the Saturn version has some slowdown issues. The textures are lower res, and most consequentially, the draw distance is worse, so things kind of pop up in your face from time to time. I suppose it's still playable, but really, the arcade version's the way to go with respect to Sky Target, if you can find it. I'm pretty well traveled in my arcade wanderings, and Sky Target is a very rare creature as far as I can tell. Which again is kind of a shame, because I think it's one of the better games in the series. This boss is really not that big of a deal. I took a few hits, but its aim doesn't seem to be all that good. It does occasionally drop behind you and shoot cluster bombs ahead of you, and you have to mind the little Merv-type warheads dropping out, but overall it's not that bad. It helps that you can blow off a lot of its wing-mounted guns. Alright, that's Gungnir down and one less weapon in Odin's arsenal. Take that, Allfather. And mercifully, we're dropping its corpse in the snowy mountains this time, instead of on a densely populated area. You're welcome, population. And here is our second branching path, and I'm gonna head for the canyon. Because just like the city, it's the more suicidal option, but should be the more visually interesting one. Actually, with all the meshes created by the scaffolds here and the somewhat busy textures surrounding us, it does make it a little harder to see what I'm doing. But aside from that rather silly plowing into a scaffold at the beginning there, I think this should be manageable. And I do appreciate the variety in Sky Target. That's not to say that Afterburner 2 ever got to feeling repetitious. It was so balls to the wall you couldn't ever really have the time to get bored with flying over the same clusters of sprites. But that said, this is nice gravy. You want to give me some nice visual and mechanical variety from stage to stage, I'm not going to complain about it. Well, okay, I might complain about it a little when it screws with my eyes like the way Mission 4 did, but overall, definitely a good thing. Stages like this would not necessarily be a good thing for survival, but for keeping things interesting, hey. Are those A-10s there? I'm not really up on my fighting aircraft, but that looked like the sort of thing we flew in A-10 Tank Killer, if you remember back to the DOS Flight Simulator days. If that is an A-10, it doesn't seem like a brilliant idea to try dogfighting against an F-14 in it, but hey, what do I know? Heavy Armored Ground Battleship, Hrafnir 2. This is definitely one of the sillier and more outlandish bosses in Sky Target, but it's also kind of cool looking, so I'm not going to complain. I'll take cool over realistic in most situations. Also, it kind of reminds me of that desert tank thing from MD Geist. Anyone remember that? Kind of a terrible anime, but a little bit fun at the same time. Had a good soundtrack, too. Dangerous, most dangerous. Well, Hrafnir 2 is clearly not most dangerous.
We survived this far somehow. If we're lucky, we'll stay together.
Aw, that's kinda sweet. Through the years we all will be together, if the fates allow. But never mind that, it's time for the final mission. Oh, and we're doing a trench run. How Star Wars. And the textures here are once again getting a little on the busy side. It's kind of difficult to tell where the geometry is going. But it is manageable, and still quite a bit better than that crazy-ass speed tunnel toward the end of Planet Harriers. And yep, not only do we have to deal with the machine gun emplacements here and the geometry trying to kill us, we will continue to have enemy aircraft flying in from straight ahead and swooping down on us from above. But that's all behind us now. Our new concern is the battle carrier helicopter Brigandine. What's a helicopter? Anyway, this highly improbable flying carrier is exactly what is being used to transport the White Sword, the experimental fighter that was stolen, and that we are willing to sacrifice to keep out of enemy hands. So if we can bring down the Brigandine with the White Sword aboard it, then our mission should be completed, and the world should be safe again. Or perhaps not. White Sword is live. I repeat, the XF-A49 White Sword is live. It is operational, and it is targeting us with an orbital laser platform. Well, that really sucks. So we'll have to do some weaving between the lasers from the orbital platform, with mixed success. Fortunately, there only seems to be the capability to launch one round of lasers at us from outer space. I don't know if we're out of range now, or if the laser overheated itself, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is we can now dogfight directly with the White Sword and take it down directly. This fight really reminds me of something that would be in the Ace Combat series. Not a series that I'm generally into, because I'm not really so much into the whole sim and aircraft porn thing, but one thing I have always liked about the Ace Combat series is the ridiculous super weapons that usually make up its end bosses, like the chandelier and shit like that. Yeah, I like big crazy super weapons at the end of otherwise more or less terrestrial military stories. And well, now there's one left in the world. It's a shame, but it had to be done. And we actually dropped it over an uninhabited area. Bonus. Yeah, I think a little victory roll is more than warranted here. Good job, team. This game may have been underappreciated, but I think y'all did a really great job with it. In fact, I'm sure some folks will consider this more than a little sacrilegious, but I actually like Sky Target better than Afterburner 2. It may not be as consistently balls to the wall, and it may not be quite as dramatic a technical accomplishment for its time, but I just think Sky Target is a little more playable than Afterburner 2. Not quite as arbitrary about whether you live or die in any particular moment. It's easier to keep track of what's going on. And the variety is certainly nice. I think the boss fights are a certainly unrealistic but a cool addition. And the color-coded targeting system really helps with respect to how many missiles you have to fire off, and so it keeps you from wasting so many of them. Also, how we get our high score initials stenciled on our wing. Very nice touch. So yeah, I would have to say that Sky Target is actually my second favorite game in the Afterburner series. What's number one, you may ask? Well, we'll get to that very soon, but we do have a couple more things to touch base with briefly in the meantime. For the moment, though, we'll just enjoy the victory flight. And yes, indeed, we did pass up the previous high score set by my test run, and we'll be sitting pretty at the top of the Ace Pilots listing. Oh yeah. So yeah, Sky Target. Really good fun. Who knew? In the year 2000, Sega released another air combat game for the Dreamcast-based Naomi board called Sega Strike Fighter. Yes, Sega Strike Fighter is a completely different game from Strike Fighter by Sega. It's all a bit confusing. Anyway, some folks consider this part of the Afterburner series. I don't know where Sega comes down on the issue, if indeed they give half a shit, but for my money, this doesn't really fit with the Afterburner games. Not only is it always first person, it's not a rail shooter. Now, Sega Strike Fighter is a free roaming game in which you can turn around and fly anywhere you please within the boundaries of the mission map. It's also a much slower, ironically less arcade-like game, with kind of a light sim feel to it. Basically, Sega Strike Fighter is to Afterburner as Ferrari F355 Challenge is to Outrun, and I only bring it up here to note that, in my opinion, it is not part of the Afterburner series. Here's a game that, with deepest apologies, I won't be able to properly demonstrate to you good folks out there in viewerland. 2007's Afterburner Black Falcon was developed by Planet Moon Studios, best known for Giants, Citizen Kabuto, exclusively for the PlayStation Portable. Unfortunately, I do not own a copy of Black Falcon, and it doesn't work properly under the current state of PSP emulation. I've only had the opportunity to spend a little time with Afterburner Black Falcon, but from what I've seen, it seems pretty solid. Not brilliant, perhaps, but reasonably faithful to the Afterburner spirit, and with a shit ton of officially licensed aircraft to unlock, so if you're into fighter porn, it's got you covered. Black Falcon is structured in a way that several other handheld games are, with a large number of short missions spread across a smaller number of maps. Think MGS Peace Walker, or Valkyria Chronicles 2. So yeah, Afterburner Black Falcon. Can't get in depth with it here, but seems respectable enough. Sadly, Planet Moon Studios is no longer with us. Well, if I can't properly cover Black Falcon, the least I can do is show you some wacky doujin games, right? Right. What we have here is Masterburner, a 2005 work by DNA Softwares. This is a Toho fan game, and I should state up front that I am not really into the Tohos, so any character or referential stuff in this game is gonna go right over my head. GTF? Goji? Anyone? Well, what I have managed to work out is that the player character is Marisa, who, if the title of a heavily mimetic music track is any indication, has a penchant for stealing precious things. That's about all I got here, folks. Let's play some Masterburner. A very nice takeoff on the Afterburner intro and title screen there, I have to say. Full marks. Let's just jump right in. And you can pretty readily see what we're dealing with here, a Tohoized version of Afterburner 2. There is a speed up button as opposed to a throttle control. That is, you can go faster when you feel like it, but you cannot brake. And going faster is not something that I think is ever really going to help you in this game. Maybe there's an application for it that I just haven't figured out, but, well, I haven't figured it out if there is one. Anyway, Afterburner, or should I say Masterburner, does have analog stick control, but it's fairly twitchy, and combined with the fact that Masterburner is even less forgiving than Afterburner 2, you're gonna see me dying a lot, often back to back to back. But really, in pretty much all respects, this plays exactly like Afterburner 2, just at an even faster pace, with enemy waves coming at you one right after the other, and unleashing waves of mostly homing shots at you. And every now and then, between stages, instead of the umbilical refueling plane, you get some Toho people coming in to restore your stock of missiles. I have no idea who they are. Again, I'm really out of my element on the Toho thing, so I welcome any input on that in the comments section. Yeah, this is a very, very merciless game. I actually have this set to the lowest difficulty, and it still kinda kicks my ass more often than not. And that's all for our first credit. We don't have a direct pick up where you left off continue here, but you can set the stage to any level you've previously been to, and pick up there at least from the beginning of the stage that you left off on. And we even get our reload all over again. Now, the timing on your dodges in Masterburner has to be more or less perfect. If you dodge a little too fast, then the shots will kind of home in on you with a little more accuracy and probably shoot you out of the sky. And of course, if you dodge too late, you're just gonna get hit directly. Just awful. Another thing that gives me trouble in this is that instead of smoke trails, you have these trails of rainbow-colored stars, which are certainly lovely to look at, but I do find them rather distracting. I grant I don't have the best visual acuity when it comes to picking out the important things in a bunch of visual noise, which is actually the reason I don't tend to do very well in Danmaku in general, which is a big part of why I'm not particularly into Toho games. But yeah, all the star fields and swirly colors and shit, they kind of make it hard for me to determine a lot of the time what exactly I need to dodge or shoot at, and what I can safely ignore. Saved by the refuel. So yeah, I reckon Master Burner would be plenty difficult enough for people who don't have that issue, but for me, with my aging eyesight, you can forget about it. I do, however, have the vision to notice that we just got fired at by some Space Harrier projectiles, which is nice to see. Those are very fast, but don't have the homing capabilities that the red shots do. Of course, if you're actually quick enough to determine which is being fired at you, the Space Harrier oval projectiles or the homing shots, well, you have much quicker image recognition than I do. And it looks like we're gonna auger in for another continue, but we should have a bonus stage and a boss fight coming in. Yes, this does have some bonus stages, and unlike Afterburner 2, it does have boss fights. So hopefully I'll actually be able to get through stage 6, and we should have one of those coming up. Damn it. One thing that's a nice little mercy in Master Burner is that, like Sky Target, it does show you, with the red circles, which enemies you've already fired at. Now then, Stage 7 is our first bonus stage. And just like Afterburner 2, we have lots of ground targets to shoot at. We actually can lock onto them with our missiles, but I would not recommend this because that's, well, a really good way to blow through all of your missiles in a hurry. And we're going to want to keep them on hand for the boss. And we will periodically have these walls of columns that we have to thread the needle through, which is a little tricky with how dramatically the perspective swings back and forth, but it's doable. For heaven's sake, though, don't lean on the turbo button here. Just like Afterburner 2, any deaths in the bonus stages do actually count. We should be getting close to the boss any old moment now. And it looks like it is the Library Master Patchouli Knowledge. Once again, any significance to that I will have to leave up to anyone able to comment with a little Toho knowledge here. But our boss will periodically fire bursts of Space Harrier projectiles and also projectiles from the gemstones surrounding her, which we have destroyed with our missiles. That's what I recommend doing. Once you've gotten rid of all the orbiting gems, things get a lot easier, and you can just do your circles or figure eights while sweeping in front of the boss to attack with your Vulcan gun. No real benefit to slinging missiles at her, and we don't have any missiles left anyway. Alright, there's a victory. We get a refuel. And we've got a new music track. I understand that the soundtracks are a big part of the draw for Toho fans, and so it's entirely appropriate that Master Burner has a really good soundtrack, which combines the classic Afterburner 2 tunes with some different melodies, which may or may not be referential to existing Toho games. Once again, I'm the wrong person to ask about that. And Master Burner also does a rather nice job of preserving the Afterburner 2 background style, with just waves and waves of segmented sprites. But it also adds a little more variety than we saw in Afterburner 2. We fly across cloud banks and forests and oceans like this one. Overall, I have to say, even though it is very sadistic, this is a really well put together game. I like it quite a bit. Let's see if I can make it to stage 12 before I run out of my last life. And I cannot help but notice that some of the enemies are Japanese-style emoticons. Is that a Toho thing? I'm sorry to keep asking that, but I just don't know. And Toho would be a really deep rabbit hole to go down. I cannot do that much research in time to get this video out the door in a semi-timely fashion. It looks like I'm already going to miss the weekend, so let's just keep on keeping on. Ugh, that almost always happens. Every time I continue, I pretty much always take a death right out of the gate. Ugh, make that 2 deaths right out of the gate. Good times, good times. And grooving on this music, though. Ugh. I'm gonna be kinda pissed off if I can't even advance one stage on this continue. Huh. At least I made it to 13. We do have some enemies coming in from behind and taking Space Harrier shots at us. And an area guard, racing... Oh, I didn't catch all of that. Yeah, I kind of forgot that during this boss fight you can run into the trees. That's kind of the big gimmick for it. So yeah, let's try that again. Fortunately, the trailing enemies don't actually tail us like they do in Afterburner 2. Reisen Udongein Inaba. Again, I have no idea what I'm dealing with here, so feel free to expound in the comments if the spirit so moves you. There's probably a Toho wiki out there somewhere. I should probably just look at that. Oh well, we're already in the thick of things. We don't have any time for that kind of thing now. I'm circling too much. I'm being careless of the trees. Eventually this will occur to me, and I'll stop doing that, but that has not happened yet. Another nice music track here, almost reminds me of Castlevania. Every then, Reisen, if I'm getting her name right, will drift in close and give you an opportunity to spam your gun at her. Just like the previous boss, your gun is going to be of more value here than the missiles. You can occasionally hit her with a missile lock whenever she's off in the distance, but your opportunity to really do big damage is when she drifts close and gives you an opportunity to fill her face with bullets. And filling faces with bullets is what Toho is all about, isn't it? And I've gone and selected the wrong stage, so let's go ahead and cube wipe on back to where we're supposed to be. There we go. Let's see if we can pull out the win this time. Out of my way, fairies. Okay, this time we're going to be conscious of the trees. We are going to be very conscious of the trees and not be conscious enough of the trees. The boss's shots are really not the biggest danger here. She does have good aim, but just like most Space Harrier shooting type enemies, she does not lead her shots. So as long as you keep on the move, you're not going to get hit. But of course, keeping on the move is a little more challenging than it might otherwise be, because you're trying not to plow into any trees while you're at it. But there we go. And we're on to the second bonus stage. This one's a little bit of a different story because it's not all ground targets. You have all of these emoticon critters floating at you, and you want to take out as many as you can. Problem is, they're a little difficult to hit, and you don't want to waste your missiles by firing them all off in a bonus stage. So we'll just have to navigate carefully so as not to plow into them, or plow into any of the bamboo here. Because yes, plowing into the emoticon cloud thingers will indeed kill you. Oh, shit. Well, one nice thing is that you have the plowing into the ground death animation every time you die in Afterburner. You never just blow up in midair. And I always did like that death animation better in Afterburner, so I have no complaints about that. Now stop tempting me with that lock-on sound. Just want to get to the end of this so I can proceed onward and get to stage 16, which is inevitably going to go badly for me. And we're back to Taketori Takeoff, which is a take on the Afterburner 2 audio track, Final Takeoff. Ah, shitcakes. Well, I had a somewhat depleted life counter coming in, so no great surprise there. Let's go ahead and pick back up on stage 15. Get our top up. And sail back into the fray. Two entirely typical results. To a consistent run of entirely typical results. Well, I don't really have any illusions that I'm going to beat this game, but I would like to at least get to the end boss. Yeah, I'm really kind of past the point at which I can keep straight what's going on here. It's all just kind of a blurry, indistinct mass of fairies, stars, hearts, blue diamonds, and purple horseshoes. So I am just gonna kind of keep firing and circling for dear life. Does that work for you? It works for me. Sometimes. Oh, and I'm also out of missiles. That's one other respect in which Afterburner is even more unforgiving than Afterburner 2. Running out of missiles is a very real concern, and in fact, unless you specifically are letting some waves of enemies just go on by you, you are going to run out of missiles. It's just a thing that's going to happen to you. And in fact, you don't get any missiles back when you die, which just seems sadistic. Come on, Afterburner, throw me a bone here. Now, stage 16 is going to be the final normal stage in the game, and the final one we can continue from. Unfortunately, the end boss is going to be on stage 17, and we can't continue from there, so we will have to repeat stage 16 every time we want to do the final fight. There we go, the analog control on the menu is a little twitchy. Sometimes it's hard to make sure you select exactly the thing you intend to. So you'll want to be real careful with that stage select. And I've never really managed to make it through stage 16 without taking at least a death or two. We're just gonna try and save as many lives as we can for the end boss and give ourselves the biggest fighting chance we can. Spoiler alert though, I'm not gonna make it. And our final foe is Stray Sister Frandle Scarlet. I don't know if she's a big deal in the Toho-verse, but she's certainly a big deal in this game. She alternates between an aimed spam of Space Harrier shots at you, and then alternating horizontal and vertical bars of projectiles. And in theory, you can always be certain of what attack's going to come next. It'll be horizontal, vertical, with a spray of shots in between each. But let me tell you, when you're in the heat of the moment trying to play this incredibly fast game with all this shit flying past you, it's a lot easier said than done. And just like the previous bosses, it seems like Frandle can take quite a bit of punishment. And yep, we've game overed. Yep, only stage 16. Alright, well, we will try and get through this as safely as we can one more time. Shit. Is not this a good beginning? Oh, come on, Marisa, keep it together. Oh, geez, just 2 deaths left in the tank when we get to the end boss, and I can't see that working out well for me. Those tentacles she has? Also, I just noticed the moon is an egg. Yet another thing, I don't know if it has any particular Toho-verse significance, but, I'll consider the observation made, I guess. And consider me digging another trench into a lovely field of flowers. I suppose there are worse resting places. I will say, as much as I'm getting my ass handed to me here, it is very satisfying to hear that of a bunch of your shots just hitting in a string. Alright, let's go ahead and give it one more shot. It keeps happening. Once again, we go in with just 2 deaths to spare, and somehow I don't think that's going to be enough. Yep, already on our very last life, and I cannot see it lasting very long. Oh, right into the wall. And that's gonna be that, I'm afraid. So yeah, Master Burner. It's pretty good stuff. Very faithful to the Afterburner 2 gameplay while throwing its own Toho spin on things. It looks good, and it's enjoyable to play, if extremely, extremely mean. And our second Wacky Dojin Soft today will be another Toho tribute, Master Burner Climax, by Shooting Area, Aqua Ely, and that blasted Hexaflange. I haven't been able to determine with certainty when this one was released, but the smart money seems to put it somewhere around 2011 or 12. Either way, Master Burner Climax once again stars Marisa, and is very loosely based on Afterburner Climax, which will be our grand finale this episode. Whereas Master Burner was very faithful to the gameplay of Afterburner 2, however, Master Burner Climax does more of its own thing, placing a greater focus on gunplay instead of missiles, and bringing Toho-style bullet hell into an Afterburner-style perspective. Let's see how that works out for me. Ah, check out that lovely aspect ratio. This episode will actually get to use the whole 720p. Sweet. And do bear with me a moment while I fiddle around with the controls and make sure my PS3 pad is mapped correctly and responding. Looks good. And now, on with the show. We get a character select, and a missile select, and you can adjust your speed there. Now, I only had Marisa available to me, so I can only assume that through certain actions or reaching certain milestones, you unlock other characters and missile sets to play as. All I can say is this has never happened to me. It's a very, very nice looking game, especially for Dojin software. We've gone full polygonal. Well, we do still have some sprites making up the shrubbery and such, but Marisa herself is now fully 3D rendered, as are the enemies. And things start off fairly straightforward and Afterburner-like initially, but that is going to change. Oh, how that is going to change. Oh, and we can turbo, but the mission transition kind of cut me off there, so I'll show that in a little while. And we're actually going to have our first boss already. And this is where you start to see things get a little more Toho. Right now, the bullet patterns are fairly modest, but yeah, things are going to go full Danmaku sooner than later. Oh, by the way, you may have already noticed it, but we have regenerating health in this game. which is another thing that will differentiate it from Afterburner Climax. Also, your missiles, well, you do have a missile counter there, but you almost never see it go down. Reason being, your missiles are replenished almost as soon as you use them. So, yeah, you're really not going to run out, even if you are constantly spamming them. Well, our boss there, whoever she may be, has picked up a new attack in her second phase, swinging sort of a scissor type of laser pattern together at us. And I'm taking a few hits here and there, especially from the wandering clouds of projectiles, but our health regeneration is more than making up for it, even though I've gone as far as halfway dead. Now, the targeting on our gun is actually pretty forgiving, pretty generous, I should say. If we get anywhere near her with our shots, they will count. Is that all? I do believe that is all, at least for the moment. And there is our turbo, and that is Climax mode. When you turbo up to the max in Afterburner Climax, you activate Climax mode, which gives you bullet time and a rather wide targeting reticle for your missiles. That's takeoff on the Climax mode that we will later see in Afterburner Climax, although in this game it seems more useful for dodging, whereas in Afterburner Climax it's mostly useful for taking out huge clouds of enemies. Now, looks like our first boss isn't quite ready to call it quits yet. Round 2. Fight! And yes, we are getting very bullet hell here. And you know how I mentioned that my visual acuity just really isn't good enough for Danmaku? Well, as it turns out, changing the perspective into behind the character instead of full overhead view, well, it only makes that worse. So I'm just going to be taking hits all over the place when this happens, and fortunately the regenerating health will help to make up for that, but it is eventually going to get the better of me, so we're not going to beat this one either. I'll just get as far as I can and show you as much as I can before the game just gets a little too crazy for me. Got an interesting sort of quasi-black and white mode here, and our boss has taken to firing nasty-looking shadow lasers at us. Fortunately, her aim is not brilliant. I think we done blew her up. And Marisa, you look a little too happy about that. You're kind of creeping me out there. Oh well. At least we get to fly over a lovely seascape. Really pretty water effect, I have to say. I do often forget to use Climax mode in Afterburner Climax, but that's just me being true to form, because when we get to Afterburner Climax, you'll see I often forget to use it then, too. And yep, I think we have definitely found our way into a Danmaku. I have to say, it does look really, really nice. This game was a pretty good technical accomplishment, as I've mentioned before, but it really shows now that we have just clouds and clouds of hundreds of 3D rendered bullets just glowing their way through the skies and making our life difficult. I can't get a good look at them, especially with the lock-on cursors in the way, but were those more of those emoticon clouds? If so, a nice little nod to the previous Afterburner. And we've got boss number 2. We've got boss number... Oh, not quite. Oh, there she is. Scads and scads of blue bullets this time, and I have to say that looks even nicer. This is probably a game I'd be better suited to watching than playing. Which makes me think I should look some videos of it up on the YouTubes at some point. Well, I'll have to do that after I get this one uploaded on my channel. Alright, we've got phase 2, and we've got some glaciers in our way. Oh, no, we don't have phase 2 quite yet. Just gonna throw some enemies at us first. But that's okay. The level parts of Master Burner Climax generally aren't too bad. It's the bosses that really fuck with you. Which is also kind of a different story from the original Master Burner, in which the levels were more than adequate at killing the shit out of me. Yep, as it turns out, 3D Danmaku is just like 2D Danmaku for me. Gets me killed a lot sooner than I would like, but sure is pretty. All glowy and swirly. This wouldn't make a half-bad screensaver. And I think we're about to have the return of that boss, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there she is. What's going on? Oh, that's right. We have a different boss now. I quite forgot. Some chick with some kind of frog hat? I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be, but it reminds me of a frog, so she'll be Frog Hat. Oh, Lord. Rather lovely river that we're floating along. I know I'm probably sounding like a broken record here, but there really are many, many pleasing sights in this game. You know, Frog Girl is feeling her Cheerios, and unfortunately I'm feeling them too. Yep, okay, I am officially not able to track what's going on here visually, and just trying to do as much damage as I can, while hopefully occasionally avoiding something or another. Right here I'm spiraling around a bit, trying to let my health regenerate a little bit before I go back to trying to land hits, and no, that's not going to work out for me. She's not going to let me stay out of the field of fire for that long. So at this point I am fully trying to concentrate on doing as much damage as I can, while just not really worrying about dodging too much, because, well, I can't. That life bar is going... Bard? That life bar is going down, though, so progress is being made. Mine's getting a little too low for comfort, though. Oh. Oh, no. No, I can't see my way through this at all. Yep, it is full-on spray and pray time, and... Oh, well, that worked out. Ah! She started with the pride flag lasers. I support your Yuri Dojin lifestyle! I support your Yuri Dojin lifestyle! Oh. And it's over, I think. Yes, apparently it is in fact over. And there's going to be nothing happening for a while. We'll just cruise on down the river and enjoy the view. And onward into a cave, and can't see shit, Captain. Oh, thanks heavens for the lock-on cursors, otherwise I wouldn't be able to tell what was going on at all. Once again, though, this, even though we don't actually see scenery, this is pretty visually striking, just all the glowy clouds of bullets coming out of the darkness. Once again, this is really not my kind of game, but sure is nice to the eyeballs. Okay, I don't quite need that much glowing. That's quite enough glowing in my face, thank you very much, game. And oh god, the lasers and the hey, it hurts me. I don't even know where this shit is coming from. I'm just trying to kill everything before it can ram another batch of coherent light down my throat. Ah! Welcome to the Tunnel of Doom. Oh, and it's with the lasers and the cluster bombs, and I'm taking hits that I don't even know where they're coming from, and oh, yeah. Fission mailed. I want to get off Miss Maurice's wild ride. Well, that was interesting. Alright, that's enough masterburnering, Internet. You'll go blind. Now, let us leave Toho Land behind and return to the actual Afterburner series with its final arcade incarnation to date, 2006's Afterburner Climax. This runs on Sega's Lindbergh hardware, which is pretty much a Pentium 4 PC with a GeForce 6800 tucked away in an arcade cabinet. That's pretty much all it is. Lindbergh also powered House of the Dead 4, Virtua Fighter 5, and several Initial D games, but we're here for the Afterburner, and friends, it doesn't get any better than this. Climax combines the intensity of Afterburner 2 with the branching paths and targeting enhancements of Sky Target, along with the best graphics the series has ever seen, all adding up to one of AM2's finest works. Let's fly. I'll be playing this on PS3, by the way. There's also an Xbox 360 version, but they're both arcade perfect, so it really doesn't matter. The aircraft, as you can see, are actually officially licensed from Boeing and Northrop Grumman. That's not entirely a good thing for reasons we'll see later, but we'll deal with that down the road. First, we will pay attention to the actual game.
Afterburner Climax.
Hey, the PS3 controller I've been using for everything is actually going to be appropriate for a change. How about that? The top score there, B, is Goji's. I'll get you yet.
Afterburner Climax.
The old school grid of spheres turning into the image of an actual afterburner into Afterburner Climax. Very nice touch, I have to say. Nice little shout out to the old school. And we've got a little tutorial here. It's not going to tell us anything we don't already know, but we might as well give it a watch just to get a little heads up on how the game controls. Movement, lock on, doing barrel rolls, they all work pretty much the same they ever did. If I have any quibble with the way Afterburner Climax actually plays, it's that the roll comes out a little bit easier than perhaps it should, so it comes out by accident a lot of times, and it does make you lose a little bit of your altitude, which can get you killed if you're close to the ground, but no big deal. Anyway, here's Climax mode, which the game is named after. It puts you into bullet time, makes your targeting reticle bigger, so you can take down scans of enemies at one swoop. Also, kinda helps you keep from getting killed every now and then. Of course, just like in Masterburner, more often than not, I forget that I have Climax mode and forget to use it, but, well, that's life. Check my options real quick. Yeah, that'll be fine. Checking out my alternate options here, but I'm gonna end up going with good old Type A. That's all fine. The difficulty can be set from 1 to 5. I'm going to stick with 3, which is the default.
Afterburner Climax.
And one neat thing about the home ports is that you get some additional EX options, which are unlocked by various achievements or failures. I'm going to keep my credits high to make sure I get through the game. You can make your lock-on cursor bigger if you unlock that option. Turn off missile recovery, which would be disadvantageous. You can set your missiles to go off automatically, same with your gun. I haven't unlocked all of these, of course. You can turn off smoke, which would have been nice in previous Afterburner games. In this one it doesn't actually matter as much. And the only way you can get to stage 14 is by fulfilling various mission sub-objectives, which I'm not good enough to do, so I'm afraid I can't show you that. Anyway, we've got the F-14D, the 18E, the F-15E. But, as usual, I'm going to stick with the Afterburner plane, the F-14D. We also do have various paint jobs that can be applied to it. And during the load screen, you can change to the old Afterburner music, but I figure we should play at least once with the new music, even if I don't like it as much. So, once again, like Sky Target, we've actually got a plot this time. We are setting out to stop the launch of a nuclear missile. There's a pretty good amount of radio chatter in this game, but it's generally not repetitious and doesn't really get obtrusive, and I think it adds to the atmosphere, so I'm good with it. Man, is this an absolutely gorgeous game or what? The technology may be circa 2006, but here in 2016, a full decade later, I think it still looks great. And as you can see, it keeps some of the targeting options from Sky Target, but the pace is a lot closer to what we had in Afterburner 2. And we do have the perspective tilting left and right, just like Afterburner 2. And yet, I feel more in control of this game. Never mind that I just got killed, that was entirely on me. Even though we do tend to recenter frequently to the center of the screen, I don't feel boxed in the way I tended to in Afterburner 2. As long as you keep going in one direction, you will drift in that direction, and just because the graphics are a lot clearer, it's easier to tell where you are in relation to things. There's also a very prominent burner glow on any of the missiles that are fired at you, which really helps a lot with respect to dodging them correctly. As I mentioned, the roll does tend to come out accidentally kind of easily in this game. Most of these have not been deliberate on my part, but they didn't get me killed, so I'll deal with it. And for the most part, you don't have to worry too much about ground obstructions in this game, but every now and then we do go into a very low-flying and geographically complex area like this canyon here. And what have we got here? We've got a stolen prototype, just like in Sky Target. If we can bring it down, that's going to be the first of our submissions successfully completed. And that's the prototype that won't be falling into enemy hands. Very nice. Unfortunately, I will not be consistent about fulfilling these submissions, so we won't be seeing the final level. And now we can take our first branching path to either the Lure of the Sky or the Volcanic Islands, and we're going volcanic. That sounds visually exciting, and as a matter of fact, it kind of is. Certainly a distinct tonal change from those clear blue skies and lovely blue ocean, but hey, variety is the spice of life, is it not? I'm not sure where that missile even came from. That's us, by the way, Jaguar Leader. Nice that your co-pilots, or not co-pilots, your wingmen actually notice when you get shot down. There we go, making some good use of the Climax mode to take down a nice big old squadron. And on we go to the Coastal Industrial Zone. Another area in which we have nothing to worry about from ground obstructions, but what we fly over, at least we get a little change of scenery. Incidentally, like Sky Target, we do have a life meter, and gunshots will not take it all the way down under most situations. Most missile hits will kill you outright, but every now and then you can take one and keep on flying. You just can't really count on that. Also, you do get a period of mercy invincibility after you've been shot down and your new plane respawns. Well, that is a very welcome bit of mercy that Afterburner Climax takes on you, where previous games in the series might not. Yeah, I'll need it. So that bit about the stealth bombers that we will not be able to lock on to with our missiles, that's a little heads up to our next submission. We have to go after that stealth bomber here. We will first have to use our afterburners to catch up with it, and then we will have to bring it down with the guns. And I think I just overshot it. Yep. Yeah, we lost the stealth bomber, and that is a submission that I pretty much never complete successfully, so that's just one reason that we won't be seeing Stage 14 today. Ah well, we'll still have a good time, right? Right. Ah, see? That's what I was talking about. Every now and then you get an accidental roll coming out and it'll plow you into the ground. Ah well. I can't get mad at you, Afterburner Climax. You're just too damn good. Yeah, I don't want to punch out either, guy who sounds a lot like Cam Clark but isn't. Oh, twice in one level. How embarrassing. It's fairly rare for an enemy to start tailing you or a missile to get locked onto your hindquarters in this game, which is a mercy because it's a lot harder to shake them than it was in any of the previous Afterburner games. More often than not, when I have a missile flying up my Afterburners, I'm just going to eat it. I've kind of resigned myself to that. Now this time we can go to Innocent Land or Forgotten Glory. Rather flowery names for some of the stages we have here, but I'm okay with that. And we've got another of those geographically interesting stages here. And by interesting, I mean likely to kill us. There are more of those A-10 looking things I mentioned in Sky Target. I don't know if they are in fact A-10s, but whatever. And our submission here is to destroy the troops. And I don't seem to be making a very good go of it. Yep, letting some right past me there. I'm trying to remember, but to the best of my recollection, I have never actually seen Stage 14 on this. So yeah, I wish I could show you that, but I'm sure there's someone else on YouTube who's got this game down to a science who will be able to pick up where I cannot. As overlooked as Sky Target seems to have been, there's a lot about Afterburner Climax that reminds me of it. Some of the stages are similar to ones that were in Sky Target, the life meter, the branching paths, the visual distinction of whether you're just locked on or whether you've actually launched a missile, and I think that's a very good thing. Even if most people don't remember Sky Target, I'm glad that Sega did, because there were a lot of good things that could have been taken from it and brought into this game. And indeed they were. Good show, Sega. Stage 10, the Sea of Twilight. And it is a lovely sunset, is it not? That's the great thing about Afterburner Climax. Even with all the death and destruction going on around you at all times, it's a pretty way to go. Even the explosions are quite handsome, I have to say. This is, ironically, I guess, the one Afterburner game where they give you the option to turn off the smoke trails, and the one in which I have no desire to do so. Get off my ass, damn it. Ooh. You got it, boss man. Alright, in this stage, our submission is to either destroy or avoid the searchlights so we don't get caught by any of them. Not exactly what you usually expect a stealth mission to look like, but technically it is one, and it's one that I flubbed. This stage's submission actually isn't all that hard to complete successfully. Usually I can, this time I just kinda blew it. Such is life. Yeah, I've definitely biffed that one. On the bright side, we get to fly over the Sleepless Sanctuary, which is a very handsome cityscape indeed. But hey, what else do we expect from Afterburner Climax? It's just, as I've mentioned many a time, a really, really nice looking game. And for being 10 years old, especially so. Actually, you know what this level's visuals kind of remind me of? A much more technologically advanced version of Night Striker. Ooh man, Night Striker Climax. That would make me a very happy bunny. Alright, we've got one more choice of evils, and I think we're gonna go for that there nuclear arsenal. We are underpaid, not Cam Clark. Having to fly at very unsafe speeds through a bunker, chock full of bullshit Resident Evil laser grids. I think if there's anything on this Earth that warrants hazard pay, that would be it. And geez, yeah, I don't know how you're supposed to avoid some of these laser arrays. Well, the answer is probably memorization. A more dedicated player could probably remember where they are and thread the needle appropriately. As much as I love Afterburner Climax, I haven't spent perhaps as much time with it as I would like to, so I have to do this shit on reaction. And that doesn't always work out for me. However, we've made it. If I had completed all of my submissions, we would go on to Stage 14 at this point, but I have yet to achieve that. Someday, Afterburner Climax. Someday.
Leader, well done. Zebra's military strength has been neutralized. They're calling for a truce. Nuclear war has been prevented. Zebra's troops have retreated to the borders. An international peacekeeping force has been deployed to maintain the ceasefire. But Zebra retains the ability to resort to war in the future. For now, we're satisfied that we've avoided a crisis and returned peace to the area. enjoy some R&R. You certainly deserve it. Enter your name.
Damn you, Zebra. One of these days will bring you to justice. As you could see in the upper left corner of the screen when the credits were going, that was ending C. I believe there are endings A, B, and C, and as I typically get ending C, I'm guessing A and B have something to do with the 14th mission that you would get if you completed all the submissions. Sorry that I can't show those to you, I would certainly like to, but I'm sure they're out there on the internet somewhere. Well, instead of enjoying some R&R, I'm having a good time. Let's keep it rolling.
Afterburner Climax.
We'll take a look at our new EX options first. And we can bring the enemy attack level one level down, it looks like. But you know what? I'm not going to. We're going to keep playing this game the way it's meant to be played. Well, with a larger number of credits than usual, but come on, I gotta give myself a little wiggle room here, right? Yeah, let's do this thing again. Let's see, what shall we fly this time? Yeah, the Rooty Tooty Fresh and Fruity Hornet. And let's take the Afterburner 2 soundtrack this time. That's the good stuff. Those dastardly zebras. Is there no depth to which they won't sink? I think there are subtle differences in how the various playable aircraft handle, possibly some differences in their missiles as well, but I couldn't swear to it. If there are differences, I reckon they're fairly minor because I don't really feel them. Oh, speaking of missiles, I can't remember if I've mentioned how this game handles your missile supply. Ooh, that is a very good place for some Climax mode. So satisfying. Anywho, as I was saying, I can't remember if I mentioned how the missile supply is handled in this game. If I didn't, well, it's pretty simple. Your missiles do gradually regenerate. How exactly that works, I have no idea, but that's what happens. They don't regenerate nearly as fast as they do in Masterburner Climax, but really, your missile supply wasn't even meaningful in that. You would have them replenished like the second they left. Whereas in this one, if you're flinging missiles non-stop, you will eventually run out until you let them regenerate a little. But still, not a big deal at all. There is one thing that Afterburner Climax does not bring over from Sky Target that I kinda wish it did, was those arrow indicators for distant aircraft on the horizon. Sometimes I do have a little trouble seeing where they are against the sky. But, again, not a real big deal. Just something I would have appreciated. This is still, for my money, by far the best game in the Afterburner series. And if we never get another one, well, I hope we do get another one, but if we never get another one, this is a damn good way to go out. Well, technically Black Falcon was released later than Afterburner Climax in 2007, was it? So that would technically be the final Afterburner game if no more ever come out, but come on. This is the last dance for the arcade Afterburner, and I think that counts for a little more than a PSP game, right? Right. Yeah, as submissions go, bringing down that stolen prototype is generally pretty easy stuff. It's the other ones that always screw me. Well, last time around we always took the right-hand paths, so at each branch this time I'm going to swing over to the left. That means this time out for Stage 4, we're going to the lure of the sky. Ooh, Aurora Borealis. Afterburner Climax going the extra mile to keep things visually interesting. And my favorite music track from Afterburner 2 as well. It's a good time. flaming chaos and the wonders of nature. An excellent 2-pack, if I dare say so myself. Oh, I didn't think to mention, something you've probably already noticed. If you choose the Afterburner 2 soundtrack, then you'll get the old school Fire voice sample. Pretty neat. Can't say I mind having that back. In fact, it's a little more conspicuous than the usual sound, so it makes it a little easier for me to tell when it's time to loose a missile. So yeah, seriously, unless for whatever reason you're particularly attached to the Afterburner Climax original soundtrack, in which case your kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay. But yes, unless that is your kink, then there's really no particular reason not to choose the Afterburner 2 soundtrack. I'm braking.
Reconnaissance report the enemy's progress. Recon reports the enemy's ground with 1 stealth bomber. Your missiles won't lock on the stealth bombers. You'll have to engage them using guns. Good luck.
You know, you really don't have to do the mid-air refueling anymore. I have regenerating missiles now. But yes, it's time for more of that bullshit with the stealth bomber. Tried using Climax mode here to try and get some more gunshots into it, but it doesn't seem to have worked out too well. In no small part because, just like in other Afterburner games, the maximum effective distance of your guns is not very much, and I wasn't nearly as far up the stealth bomber's ass as I needed to be to do enough damage in a short period of time. Oh well. I do have the worst time with that particular submission. Ah well. We can get it out of our system with some wanton destruction over the desert. That always helps, right? No, the other right. I've always kind of wondered why Not Cam Clark so often says we'll drive them out whenever you get destroyed. Ah well, mine is not the reason why. Mine is to let these big-ass planes pass me up and then throw several missiles down their tailpipes. Well, I don't suppose planes actually have tailpipes, do they? Alright, this time we're skipping the Forgotten Glory and heading to the Innocent Land. Oh, it's got a nice rainbow off on the horizon. It is a rather innocent land, isn't it? Little villages and such. Hopefully they don't take any wreckage in the middle of their quaint town square. Our submission here involves shooting down the enemy targets while not shooting down any of our friendlies. Fortunately, it does not seem like you have to worry about your missiles locking onto the Allied fighters, but you can have your missiles hit them even if they're not the intended target. Wow, I completely lost track of what was going on there. Ah, crap. I didn't even take down half of the targets I was supposed to there. Well, at least I managed to avoid taking out the friendlies for the most part. And a little more indoor flying, because that's always a good idea. Wow. That worked out shockingly well. Who would have guessed? Alright, mission paths are converging once again at the Sea of Twilight. Well, Climax mode's not gonna help me there, but I did manage to shake it, so maybe it helped after all. No, I think that was just luck more than anything else. We sure will, not Cam, we sure will. It's not something I can do terribly often, but when I manage to dodge an entire big barrage of missiles, it always feels pretty damn good. Don't worry about sympathetic detonation of the nuclear device. I'm not sure what to make of that line. Is he saying that sympathetic nuclear detonation is not possible, or that, you know, it's totally a thing that could happen, just try not to worry about it? Well, either way, I suppose it's not really something I can do anything about anyway, so we'll try just not to blow the stealth mission this time. Well, I did eat a laser there, but I managed to avoid detection. A submission actually successfully completed. That's a relative rarity. Yeah, Jaguar Leader just collided with a skyscraper. I wonder, is everything we're flying over part of zebra country? If this is all zebra, then screw the collateral damage, serves them right. I'm braking left, I'm braking right, I'm braking every which way, and it doesn't seem to be helping much. Oh, nope, finally shook him. Just in time to fly into a missile. And in our final branch path, this time we're gonna forget all about the nuclear arsenal and head for the final line of defense.
Great reception. Now it's party time.
Well, it looks like this time we don't have so much tunnel flying to do. The enemy presence is pretty badass, though. We do get to destroy some watercraft, though, which is always fun. Yeah, scraping the ground will do that. But we lived, and we completed our mission, even if, once again, we didn't complete our submissions, which means we don't get to complete Stage 14. C'est la vie.
Jaguar leader, well done. Zebra's military strength has been neutralized. They're calling for a truce. Nuclear war has been prevented. Zebra's troops have retreated to the borders. An international peacekeeping force has been deployed to maintain the ceasefire. But Zebra retains the ability to resort to war in the future. For now, we're satisfied that we've avoided a crisis and returned peace to the area. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy some R&R. You certainly deserve it.
Well, my friends, that is all there is. Aside from the one secret mission that I can never quite get to, that's all there is of Afterburner Climax, and that's all there is of Afterburner. Now, you remember when I was saying that it wasn't entirely a good thing that the aircraft in this were all licensed from Boeing and Northrop Grumman? Well, the reason that's not entirely a good thing is that the license has since expired, and Afterburner Climax has been delisted from both the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live. It's no longer possible to buy it. There was also a mobile version for iOS and Android, which I have not myself played, but I understand is pretty decent, and that too has been delisted. It is no longer possible to buy Afterburner Climax in any form. And what that says to me is that in the age of digital distribution, the current state of IP law kinda sucks. But I make it a policy not to get political here, and so I'm not going to do that now. What I will say, and I have no illusions that I'm loud enough a voice to be heard or an important enough voice to pay attention to, but I'll say it anyway. Sega, please make Afterburner Climax available again. Eventually, all of the PS3s and all of the Xbox 360s that have this game already installed are all gonna die off, and then there's just not gonna be any way, aside from the rare arcade cabinets, that people are gonna be able to play this game. And for my money, that's just a crime. It's really one of the best games AM2 ever made, one of the best games Sega as a whole has ever made, and I think, well, I'm in favor of video game preservation in general, and this one more than most. So yeah, I know it's probably not cost effective to go striking up a new license with Boeing and Northrop, and you might not even be able to get them no matter how much you were willing to pay, so, you know, go ahead and genericize the aircraft and make them unidentifiable as anything in particular if that's what you have to do, but please bring back Afterburner Climax. Making it impossible to get your hands on this game, just a real bummer, guys. Anyway, that's more than enough soapboxing on my part. And wow, I see we have passed up the 2-hour mark. Forget feature length, I've gone Peter Jackson length with this one. That said, however long the journey, I hope you have found it interesting and entertaining, folks. Afterburner, as I said at the beginning of this episode, is a very different beast from Space Harrier, but it does feel like maybe a marriage relation, not a blood relation. It comes from Sega, it comes from AM2, and they do have a few basic things in common, so yeah, I didn't want to leave Afterburner entirely out of the fun. Nevertheless, I've said everything I can think of to say about it, so I hope you will join me, folks, next time when we get back to Space Harrier and Friends. Until then, this is Un, signing off. Afterburner and Friends has been brought to you by Justin Carpenter, Nolden, Zangamarth, Charlie Dunst, Anonymous Benefactor, sorry for leaving you out last time, AB, my bad, John Madigan, Johnny Millennium, Sanguine Games, Misha Van Doren, Craig Patterson, Frank Grizzy, Tim J., Lolo DePuzlo, Joshua C. Ritchie, Jared C. Rice, Darren Chow, Sonic Rose, EX Potemkin, Alicia Goranson, Argyle Jelly, Mechasaurus, DG Jono, Doug Russell, August Fortnite, Patrick Bellinger, and the rest of the gang. Thank you, as always, to watchers, commenters, and subscribers as well. Till next time, everybody, keep the sun at your backs and have a wonderful week.